On the Sports Daily, it's time to introduce the 1985 Brownlow medalist from the Footscray Football Club at Brad Hardie. This segment is proudly presented by Retrovision, Loans 123 and Ross's Auctioneers and Valuers. Introducing the boy from Hilton, the AFL guru, Brad Hardie.
Good morning to you, Bradley.
Morning, Diggers. Good morning, TC. Coming to you by phone this week. Just spending a few days up on the Murray, which is terrific. And Diggers, I think we've got a new Sydney Swans. I'm sure you would have talked about it earlier in the program. But the Melbourne Storm, I don't think they can do anything else now, TC. Making a grand final won't cut it. I think they have to win one now. Diggers are a little bit kin to the Sydney Swans, aren't they? You know, to try and get some, last year, well, pretty much outplayed by the Panthers, but last night coughed up something they probably shouldn't have. And, it's going to be a long season for them next year to get back to try and redeem themselves.
At least they were competitive, Diggs.
Yeah.
Swans just show up and
show up and get spanked. But no, wonderful game. The NRL Grand Final always is. There's so much interest in it, and it's become a bit like a Super Bowl. The NRL Grand Final in terms of they seem to be close. The grand finals, like the Super Bowls, like they seem to be able to go down to the wire, and the NRL grand finals, unlike what we've seen with some of the AFL grand finals of late, they keep you on the edge of your seat for a fair portion of that 80 minutes.
Well, it was a stark contrast, wasn't it? Because I think it was the highest scoring first half, Diggers, in an NRL grand final, TC, and in the second half, well, the Storm couldn't score. They played very conservatively, and didn't they make some fumbles and bumbles along the way, and that's what can happen in big games. And if you don't get it right, and they'd be disappointed with a couple of their superstars who didn't quite turn up on the day, but that happens. But when your support cast is equally as flat, it does not happen. But geez, that Reece Walsh, we spoke about Coates, who was a bit disappointing last night. We thought he could be a cross-coder, but maybe Reece Walsh could be a cross-coder. He might be one who could trade in there for the Aussie rules footy boots and do pretty well at it, I would have thought.
Well, he was outstanding and a fitting Clive Churchill medalist. Now, Brad, did you fall off your chair when Christian Petrarca nominated Gold Coast?
I did a little bit because, as I say, we had the inside running on that. It wasn't really on their radar 3 weeks ago. They had other plans. Now I can confide that they were trying to do a deal with the Sydney Swans for Rowbottom. His sister plays in the AFLW up there, TC, and they were hopeful that he would go to the Gold Coast and join her there in exchange for a first rounder, because they've got plenty, and then that would go to Carlton for Charlie Curnow as part of a deal to get Charlie to Sydney. So they really had Rowbottom on the list. Your boy Simpkin from North Melbourne was also a strong consideration, Diggers, and then it was a bit of gap, and then it was Petrarca. But then Petrarca went to Adelaide last week. His wife didn't like the fanfare, and which is understandable when you're a player of his calibre going into Adelaide or anywhere for that matter. You're going to cause a ruckus. She didn't quite like that. They do have apparently a holiday home up on Noosa. Good luck to them. And she likes the lifestyle. He's more about the footy, So it's not a backward step for Christian to be going to the Gold Coast to, complement the likes of Rowell and Anderson and Miller. I mean, he could probably be that. He's not Dusty Martin, but he could be that sort of Dusty Martin role, Diggers, if you know what I mean. He could play centre forward and roll and hopefully get back to goal kicking form, which he's sort of lost his way a little bit over the last 12 months. Yeah, so I'm not surprised in the end. And obviously he and Hardie obviously hit it off like a house on fire, and they've said, "Yep, let's go it and give it a throw at the stumps." Now they've got to try and get it done.
All right, what would get it done for Christian Petrarca?
Oh, it'd certainly have to be a first rounder. I think the Sam Flanders deal. I was saying to the boys yesterday that Sam Flanders was actually in a meeting with the Gold Coast Suns late last week, TC, and they were talking about him, where he wanted to go and what was best for Gold Coast, etc. And obviously Melbourne had come into the frame because of Petrarca, and the phone rang. He had to excuse himself from the meeting, and he came back. He said, "I'm going to St Kilda. I want to go to St Kilda." So they could probably still get it done. I think St Kilda, probably could receive, an early pick, and it might be a bit convoluted, but I think for Petrarca to get done, they're going to have a first rounder go to Melbourne and probably a player somewhere along the line. I would have thought it won't be Humphreys. I mean, forget that. That they will flat out refuse to let him go, even though his manager said nothing to see here, nothing doing, and then all of a sudden these clandestine meetings. There's been meeting with Hawthorn earlier in the year. He's walked around the tan with Melbourne, amongst others. So again, the line's the second language of the AFL, as we know, Diggers, and They've just got to try and hunt one out, TC. That's the way they've got to do it.
Yeah, he's a good one, Humphrey. You'd be trying to keep him as long as you possibly can. He's a powerful young man, Bailey Humphreys, and has enormous upside. The one that surprised me with Gold Coast, Brad, was Ben Ainsworth, who has been there a few years now. He's an established player, and I think he's open to a move.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Diggers. They've got a few of those. I mean, Davies came into his own this year a little bit. Fiorini found a bit more of the ball, but he wants to he's maybe exploring options as well. We know Rosas has declared he wants to go, not that he was in the team, but yeah, that's what happens. I mean, it doesn't matter how well your team's going and then played their first finals, as we know, TC for 15 years. There's always a matter of, can I get better elsewhere? Can I get more opportunities elsewhere? And I suppose with the midfield depth and the like that they're getting now, he's probably felt as though, well, look, I'm not going to get in there. But whether he gets if he chooses somewhere where he thinks he can get in, well, that's good. But you still got to make it, don't you? You still got to cut in, and you won't be getting the pie ride wherever you go. So yeah, I was a bit taken aback with that one myself because I think he's a pretty good player.
Seems the way forward, doesn't it? Players are just going to come out and say, I'm open to a move, and then you gauge who comes calling. Well, your manager's got to take a couple of calls, and then you make a decision, and you have to walk back to your old club or you move on.
Well, that's the case with Butters, Zach Butters. I mean, he wants out, but he has to get aggressive now. He hasn't been aggressive to this point. He's just sort of been, they might let me go. They probably won't let me go. He's got to force the issue now. As Zach Merritt did. I mean, it's been a bit ugly and a bit messy for Zach Merritt, but at least he's on his way, in terms of, he's on the path to trying to get to Hawthorn. Well, Zach Butters, if he wants to go, he has to be vehement and he has to say, you have to let me go home. I want to go home. So that's the only way it's going to even get thought about being done, because if he's just going to be passive and say, oh, well, I could stay, I could go, that's not going to cut it. So I'll be watching that space over the next few weeks, that's for sure.
Yeah, very much so. So what do you expect to happen in the next 24 to 48 now that we are in the space of trading?
Yes.
I think some of the more obvious ones, my checks and that will, the deconning, that type of thing will get negotiated, get through, and they're talking about an inordinate amount of players moving, aren't they, Diggers? I mean, I read somewhere the other day, don't quote me, I think it was 70 or 80 that could be moving, but, not a lot of them are high-density ones. We know there's a few out there, but there's going to be, until one of the big ones falls, we're probably just going to be chit-chatting about, the little side shows, along the way. But they've got to get aggressive. Sydney on Curnow if they want him. I know he's in an ideal world he'd love to go to Geelong, but that's not going to happen. I can't see that one being materialised. So yeah, and then other players, as I say, like Butters and co, need to be strong. And if you want to go, sometimes you've got to be confrontational. There's a lot of people out there who don't like confrontation. So it's not a good place to be. If you're trying to get yourself out of your club and go on somewhere else early, you've got to be just that. You've got to be in their face.
Who would lead the charge for Zach Butters if Hawthorn's going after Zach Merritt?
Be your boys, wouldn't it, Brad?
Yeah, it's our boys. I think we're in front by a mile, but it's just a matter of, as I say, he's got to get aggressive and start getting the ball moving. He comes from a town called Darley, which is just out at Bacchus Marsh, near Bacchus Marsh in the western suburbs, TC, and grew up a Bulldog supporter. His mother's a mad Bulldog supporter, etc., etc. He would love to live out that way. So it just makes sense, that would be the way he'd want to go. They could fit him in. Obviously, they tried and missed with Wilkie, but made St Kilda pay, and they couldn't get both anyway. So I think I'll go one or the other, and now the other is now the option.
Okay, does Charlie Curnow stay, or does he end up somewhere?
I think there's only a possibility of two. I think it's stay at Carlton or get to Sydney. And again, it have to be an aggressive move by Sydney to try, because as I said, they were hoping Rowbottom. Now they're talking Hayward. So it's they've seen a few more. Georgie Hewitt went down there. There's been a few like that, but they'll need more than that. As I said, they'll need a first rounder and a Hayward, or maybe a first rounder and a future, and a Hayward type thing. I think to even get to the negotiating table, to be brutally honest, TC. But it'd be a good move for Sydney. I think that'd be fair to say, because hopefully young McDonald's back next year from injury. Amati's underwhelmed. The big McLean sort of doesn't quite cut it. So, that would certainly straighten them up a little bit, wouldn't it, if they could get Charlie Curnow up the front and get McDonald back.
Nice.
They could have a 2 or 3 prong attack that would be well worth watching, and certainly worried about if you're an opposition coach.
Well, he is pricked up, and I must admit, when I read the story, Will Hayward, who we know was being courted by Carlton a couple of years ago before he recommitted to Sydney, over the past 72 hours, said, look, if I'm part of that trade that gets Charlie Curnow to Sydney, that I'm okay with that. I don't want to be somewhere where I'm not wanted. I haven't heard anything officially from the club or my management, but I'd be open to that. So that might unlock something for Sydney to acquire Charlie Curnow.
Yeah, you're right, because that's absolutely spot on, and that's the attitude you've got to have in modern day footy. If you're just going to be rusted on, and so I keep hearing Jack Steele. No wonder, I know he wants to stay because of the money he's got. Jack Steele saying, no, I don't want to lose St Kilda, but some people are going to have to come a calling, because they've obviously got him to step down from the captaincy, because that's going to Wilkie, and he's on big money. So how do you get him out of there? Where do you get him to? What's the right club for him? Unfortunately, he's in a range of slow-moving midfielders, and clubs don't want that. They want breakaway midfielders. Clayton Oliver's on the market. It's a bit of flush with some of these slow-moving midfielders who don't hurt you. So, and Jack Steele 3 years ago absolutely was flying, but he's not flying anymore. So, yeah, you've got to be open to these sort of things like Hayward is. And then look, he wouldn't be on anywhere near the same money as Steele, but I've got to admit, I guess I don't know what you think, but TC, he's been a bit disappointing for me, Hayward. He breaks out every now and then, kicks 3 or 4, and you think, yep, he's here, and then you don't see him for another month, 5 weeks. You think, oh God, I've missed this, I've misunderestimated or overestimated him or whatever. So that's the thing. So as I say, if he's prepared to move and Carlton are prepared to take him, well, I'd be doing it.
Playing in the forward line at Carlton, he won't get too many chest marks, Diggers.
No, I'm just looking here. He's played 184 games, Will Hayward, and he's kicked 229 goals. Like, his return in the last, what are we looking at here? 2021, he's kicked 28, 34, 25, 41 and 29. So, look, he's durable, he's consistent. What is he now? He's October, so he's a 26, 27-year-old. He's got a few years left in him.
Yes,
I don't know. He's solid. He's a solid player. Exactly right. He's a solid player. I'm not sure.
Good stats there, Diggers. But if you go into it forensically, as I say, you'll see out of the 28 this year, he might have kicked 4 twice or something.
Yeah.
So what's going on the rest of the time? You know what I mean? If you kick a dozen or 13 TC in 3 or 4 games, and then what are you doing for the other 20? Clearly not enough. But you're right. He's solid. And look, they need someone down there at Carlton who can finish. And they've tried a few, and Jesse Motlop looks like he's going to break out up the field next year. So they really haven't had that solid goal kicker down there. And if he could complement, Big Harry Mackay and get a few contested marks, etc., because he can do that. He can play at ground level and in the air. So yeah, he might be worth 30 or 40 to him.
Anything else to touch on before we let you go, Brad?
Oh, no. I think, as I said, we'll just sit back with the popcorn now and watch everything unfold, I think, TC, because, as soon as one of the bigger ones drops, I think we'll start to get a bit of movement at the station. We're going to have a lot of speculation about what's going on and who may be moving where over the next few days, and we'll try and keep you abreast of it as much best as we possibly can, boys.
All right. And
that's thanks to our great mate Mortz at Group 1 Mortz from Retrovision, 17 stores. It's got to be one near you. The Nude Nut, 1-800-100-100. We'll keep reinforcing that he does things the banks can't. And don't forget Frankie Lee at Ross's Auctions, boys. So enjoy your day. Hit them straight and back a winner.
All right. Thank you very much, Brad. We'll catch up tomorrow.
Cheers, boys.
Brad Hardie is proudly presented by Retrovision, Loans 123, and Ross's Auctioneers and Valuers. Retrovision, lowest price guaranteed. RAC members save 5%. Loans 123 for all your loan needs. Call Steve Sell on 1800 100 100. Ross's Auctioneers and Valuers, the leading auctioneering firm in WA.